could fill out an online survey for her when I got home, and she was so sweet that I really wanted to do it. So when I got home, I went ahead and I started to log on to the address on the receipt, and I had only typed in part of it when something popped up that sounded like the right thing, and, you know, being in a rush and everything, I just clicked on that, even though it turned out not to be the actual site of the CVS survey. It was a malicious website. Now, I am super lucky that I had NordVPN to keep me safe, because who knows what would have happened without them. I highly recommend that you make sure that your online activity is safe too. Get the exclusive NordVPN deal by clicking the link below in the description box. Plus, get 4 months free on a 2-year plan. Thanks again to NordVPN. Now let's get back to the case. Tonight we are traveling to New York. Shout out to all my friends in New York. We're actually going to a town in upstate New York, a very small town called Sodis. And this is the case of Josh Niles and Amber Washburn. There are going to be 4 major players in this case: Joshua, Amber, Charlene, and Tim. But don't worry, I am going to try to make this easy to follow, even though it is another one of these absolutely insane, twisted cases that sounds like an amazing soap opera, but you would never believe that this could have ever happened. Okay, so buckle up. Let's start with Joshua Niles. He was born on January 27th, 1990, in Canandaigua. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And that is in upstate New York. His parents' names were Jean P. and Barbara Niles. He grew up in a very large family. He was one of 5 siblings. He attended Newark High School. Now that's not Newark, New Jersey, obviously. It's right there where he lived in upstate New York. And there he met a girl named Charlene Childers, who was 2 years younger than him. When she was 16, she became pregnant with his baby, and she moved into his family house with them. And not long after that, they had another child. Now, they were very young, and obviously they were very stressed out just by virtue of having 2 little babies and not a lot of experience on how to deal with that. They were constantly at odds with each other. Their relationship was extremely tumultuous. Charlene had called the police on multiple occasions to report whatever domestic situation was going on at the time. And one of those times, Josh wound up being arrested, and he pled guilty to unlawful imprisonment after Charlene said that he had tried to choke her. Now, according to Josh's mother, Josh was hard-headed, and Charlene was always instigating fights. Josh's sister said that Charlene had 911 on speed dial. She was always calling the police. So in 2013, when Charlene was around 21, her family moved to Texas, and she went right along with them. She was around 21, and she took the children with her to Texas. And everyone was pretty relieved. Josh's family was relieved that, this relationship was breaking up. They remained cordial regarding the custody of the children. Charlene would keep them in Texas during the school year, and Josh would have the kids for holidays and also for the entire summer vacations. So they were getting along well as far as, co-parenting. And as time passed, Josh became a very stable and successful adult. He owned his own landscaping business, and he enjoyed working on machinery, lawnmowers, and snowblowers. He enjoyed the outdoors and cooking. Things were going pretty well for him, and he started dating a new woman. Her name was Amber Washburn. Now let me tell you a little bit about Amber. She was born to Christopher and Marcia Washburn on July 16th, 1994. So she was about 4 years younger than Josh. And she was born in Sodis, New York. Very close to where Josh was living. She had one sister. She graduated from Newark High School as well. She loved the outdoors and gardening. Sounds like a perfect match, right? And she enjoyed learning new things. She worked at Wegmans in the bakery department, and she regularly attended Cross Creek Church with her parents. Now Amber became pregnant with Josh's child, and she gave birth to a son who they named Joshua Jr. Joshua Jr. was diagnosed with autism when he was about 1.5 years, and Josh and Amber were doing a good job of caring for his needs, and they loved him very, very much. And Amber was a wonderful mother to not only Joshua Jr., but when the other children came to stay with them, Josh's other 2 kids, she cared for them as if they were her own as well. And everybody noticed she was an excellent mom to all 3 of those children. Meanwhile, down south in Texas, Charlene married a man in 2014 with whom she had another child, so she had 3 children. And she got a job as an animal control officer for the Dumas, Texas Police Department in July of 2016. And that is where she met a man named Tim Dean. That's the 4th player in this story, Tim Dean. He was a sergeant at the police station, and he was married as well. So both of them were married. Both of them had kids. He had a daughter with his wife. The 2 of them started to have an affair, and a few months later, Tim actually got a new job as police chief at the Sunray, Texas police station. Now, Sunray is a very small town in the Texas Panhandle, and the police station only had 3 officers that worked there, including Tim. And Charlene and Tim I'm not sure exactly what her motivation was or what exactly she said when she shared it with them. I've heard different explanations as to what her point was, whether she was trying to say, look at what a horrible husband he is, or what a horrible father he is, or look at the way this child is behaving. I've heard many different explanations, so I can't tell you for sure. But nonetheless, she shared it on Facebook, and next thing you know, this video was shared with the mother of the 3-year-old little girl. So of course she went to the police with this, and in May of 2018, Tim Dean was charged with felony child abuse, and both he and Charlene wound up losing custody of their kids because it was felt that no children were safe to live there in the home with Tim Dean. So the 3-year-old little girl went back to live with her mother, and Charlene's children went to live with their father. And in addition, Tim Dean also lost his job as the police chief, and he got himself a job working for Frito-Lay. Now, Charlene was absolutely destroyed over the fact that she had lost the custody of her children. And she spoke with the judge and she said, listen, I will divorce Tim if it means I can keep the custody of my children. And the judge said, go ahead, divorce him, and we'll talk about it once that's all done. But for now, you don't have custody of these kids. Charlene traveled up to Sodis, New York on multiple occasions to see her children and to talk with Joshua and try to plead with him to, somehow allow her to have custody back if that was in his power. I don't know, but nothing came of it. Now let's move to the date of the crime. It was October 22nd, 2018. And sheriff's deputies responded to Josh Niles and Amber Washburn's home in Sodis, New York, on reports of a shooting. It was reported by a neighbor who had viewed this whole thing out the window of her house. So she looked out and she saw Josh standing outside and talking with a man who he seemed to know. And then the man pulled out a handgun and shot Josh. At the same moment, Amber pulled into the driveway in her car with her 4-year-old in the back seat. That was Joshua Jr. And she witnessed the shooting, at which point the shooter turned his gun on Amber and shot her one time right through the windshield and into her head, killing her. She had been in the process of putting her car in reverse when she first saw what was going on. Like, she was trying to reverse out of the driveway and get away, because also Josh, who had just been shot, was screaming her name, warning her he was still alive. So her car was in reverse when she was shot, and her car wound up just rolling all the way back into the driveway of the people across the street. Then the gunman turned back to Josh, who was trying to crawl under his own truck for safety. But the gunman shot him a bunch more times, which totaled 10 times altogether, killing him. And then the guy ran away. So the police showed up to the scene. Sadly, both people were dead on arrival. The little boy was still in the back seat, and they said he was gripping his chicken McNuggets. He was fine physically, but he wouldn't speak. He was actually nonverbal due to his autism, but he saw the whole thing. The police immediately began She explained that she had seen it on Facebook. Somebody had posted the address and everything, and she knew that that was Josh because of that. And the officer who spoke to her said she sounded like this sweet little timid Southern belle when she spoke to him. And Charlene also attended a candlelight vigil for the victims, and she was interviewed talking about how she was extremely upset due to the fact that her children would now have to grow up without a father. Charlene was questioned by the detectives, but she said she knew nothing. And why would she want to hurt the father of her kids? You know? She said, quote, "That's still the father of my damn kids. And the woman who stepped up and was a great mom to my kids is gone too." End quote. It was determined that she was in Texas at the time of the shooting, so she couldn't have done it. But she had revealed to the police that she was dating a man at that time named Casey, who lived in Sodis, New York. So the police are thinking, maybe it's that guy. You know, he lives in Sodis. And this guy had a criminal history. So they went right to check him out. But he had an alibi. He was at work at the time of the shooting, so it was not him. So next the police start to wonder about Tim Dean, Charlene's husband, who she was in the process of divorcing. Now, they're thinking he definitely has a motive because she is divorcing him because of the fact that she lost custody of the kids, right? So maybe he killed Josh so that the kids would go back to Charlene and then she wouldn't divorce him. So they're thinking that sounds like a good motive. It could be him. So they check into it a little bit. They find out that Tim has actually missed several shifts of work recently, including on the day of the murder. And they look a little further to find out that he had been in Kansas, which was 400 miles from where he lived in Texas, a couple days before the murder. And he had gotten into a car wreck in a rental car. So they check this out. They talk to the police officer who responded to the wreck. So what had happened was Tim was driving along and he made a U-turn. I guess he did it too quickly or too sharp or something, and he wound up in a ditch. So it was just his car. There wasn't anyone else involved in this wreck. But anyway, he couldn't get the car out of the ditch. He had destroyed it in some way. And the police officer who came there spoke to him quite a bit. Tim was very chatty. The whole thing was caught on body cam. And they're like, "What are you doing here? You know, why did you come to Kansas from Texas?" He told the officer that his life had, quote, kind of gone to S lately. And he said that he was going to visit a family friend in New York. He had told them that he did have a couple of guns in the car, not for any reason, he just was letting them know. And when they looked at the car insurance information, they saw that the car was rented, but it was not rented by him. It was rented by his friend, named police officer police officer who took the report felt like there was something really, really odd going on. He didn't know quite what. He didn't have anything to hold him on, so he let him go. And then Tim had gone to the place where the car was towed to, like a garage, to collect his things out of the back of the car. And the investigators spoke with the guy who worked there to find out what had gone on. And that guy said that Tim seemed very strange to him. He said that Tim had taken a bulletproof vest out of the trunk of the car, as well as a handgun and an AR-15 and a ton of ammo. And he had left with that stuff. And the guy showed them video footage of it as well. So it turns out that after that, he went to try to rent a new car. But all he had was cash. And the rental agency would not take cash. He needed a credit card. So he contacted Charlene, who had driven about 5 hours to meet him in Kansas and rent him a car using her own credit card. And then she went back to Texas and he went on his way. So the next thing that happened was the investigators brought in Officer Braun Bolar. You know, the guy who rented the car for Tim. So he said to them that he had just rented the car as a favor for Tim, just because they were friends and Tim needed it. Now he worked at that same police station where Tim used to work. So this guy agreed to take a polygraph. I don't know why he did, but he did. And they said he did not pass the polygraph test, at which point he confessed that Tim Dean, had planned on going up to New York with the car to kill his wife's ex, Josh. And he also said that Charlene was there on the day when they had discussed it. They had met to discuss this in the garage of Tim's house. The three of them talked over the plan. Can you believe it? So Bolar was ultimately charged with conspiracy. And next thing that happened was a whole SWAT team showed up outside of Tim Dean's house to arrest him. And they were worried at how he might respond given the fact that he had just killed 2 people, possibly, potentially. So they had a SWAT team and they put a bunch of explosives outside of Tim's door. And then they waited for the explosives to go off, blowing up the door. At which point, Tim came running out of the house with his hands up, and they arrested him. Now, down at the police station, he admitted to absolutely nothing. He gave them the story that he was just driving around because he was depressed, and he had, the guns in the back because actually he was thinking of taking his own life. And he said he was on his way to Sodis, New York, because he wanted to talk to Charlene's uncle who lived there, because maybe the uncle could somehow convince Charlene not to divorce him. But then he said he never actually got around to going and visiting the uncle. When Charlene originally began talking with the police, she denied everything. But ultimately, she wound up admitting that it was her who brought up the idea of killing Josh. She had brought it up when she and Tim were driving home upstate New York. She had just visited her kids at Josh's, and she realized she wasn't going to get the custody back. So she had brought up the idea of killing him. But killing Amber was not part of the plan at all, because she agreed that Amber was actually a great mom to her kids. There was no reason to kill her. She just was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Charlene said that 2 months after she had this idea, she brought it up again. And she told Tim that she wanted him to do it, and she told him that she loves him. So, in May of 2019, Tim Dean went to trial, and Charlene was the star witness against him. Plus, the DNA from the ski mask had come back, and it was his. He was convicted and sentenced to life without parole. Charlene had accepted a plea deal, and she downgraded her charge to first-degree manslaughter, and she was given 28 years in prison, and she will be eligible for parole when she is 49 years old. Braun Bowler got 1 to 3 years for second-degree conspiracy. And that is the case. What are your thoughts? I will share some of mine. First of all, rest in peace to Joshua and Amber. My heart goes out to all 3 of the children who will now grow up without parents. And my heart also goes out to the parents of Amber and Josh and the siblings and all the rest of their friends and family. What a horrible and tragic loss. Let's talk a little bit about this murder plan. I have to say, I am truly surprised that they thought they could ever get away with this. I mean, it was totally doomed from the start. You don't have to be a police chief to know that they were going to get caught. There was just so much going on here. And they involved this extra person in it. Why? Why did they get this extra guy in? Braun Bowler. I mean, so I'm asking, why did they involve him? And then I'm asking even more strongly, why did he agree? What did he have to gain? This guy had nothing to gain. The other 2 at least had a reason. This guy just wants to be a good friend to Tim by renting him a car to use for a murder. Like, I just don't get it at all. That guy is truly, truly shocking to me, okay? So he destroyed his life for trying to be a good friend to a guy who wanted to commit a murder of an innocent person, okay? So what were they thinking? This would be perfect if this guy rents the car for them. No one's ever going to figure out who did it, because this guy doesn't have a connection to anybody or anything, right? No. Just works at the same police station where Tim used to work. That's all. So anyway, he goes out and he winds up running the car into a ditch and having the police come out to take this whole report. Now, wouldn't you think that would be the point where he would say, oh, you know what, I better scratch this plan because there's just too much going on already? No, not at all. He's thinking, okay, let's keep it going here. So Charlene comes out there to rent him a car now. So why would they think at this point it's okay for Charlene to rent him this car, when obviously that didn't seem like a good idea in the beginning? They got this other guy to rent it. Didn't they realize that they were going to be suspects in this murder, no matter what, even if there wasn't any initial should have scratched the whole plan. I mean, they never should have done it to begin with, but once this thing happened in Kansas, that should have been it. If they had even half a brain between them. So I'm also thinking, why did Tim think that by killing Josh, he was going to get Charlene back? I mean, I guess that's what she told him, but the reason that she lost the kids was because of Tim. And she had told the judge she was going to divorce Tim so she could get the kids back. So if Josh dies, that doesn't mean that she could stay with Tim. She wasn't going to be allowed to keep the kids if Tim was with her. Plus, she had already gone and gotten herself a brand new boyfriend in Sodis, New York. So another thing I wanted to talk about was the fact that it was Charlene's idea to commit the murder. And Tim went along with it because he wanted to win Charlene back, presumably. And when he is brought in for questioning, or when he is arrested, he remains completely quiet. He is not giving up anything. He just lied about everything that happened. He didn't try to bring up Charlene or say she told him to do it or anything like that. He just would not tell them anything. So he goes away for life without parole. Then you have Charlene, who is the one who wanted Josh to be murdered, so she planned it. And she decided that she would take a plea. She would tell the whole story. She would testify against Tim, thereby reducing her own sentence down to 28 years. So that really made me think. I mean, I'm not saying that Tim is less guilty or, he's a great guy or anything. I'm not saying he was manipulated. None of that. No, he was bad. He was a bad guy. He did bad things. Very, very bad. Yes. He should be in prison. He is dangerous. But look at the fact that Charlene is the one who created this whole thing. She's the one who came up with the idea. If not for her, none of this would have happened. And yet she is the one who got the plea deal and will get out of prison. They say she'll be out when she is 49, or she'll be eligible for parole, so she'll still have a life ahead of her. I just find that interesting. So anyway,